All right, welcome back. I hope you found session one very valuable. In fact, this will live forever on Regions' website. You can go find that, and you can get some information from any of the Regions people you see here tonight. They'll help you know where you can find this. If you missed something in the first session and want to go back and find out everything that was said, that can be helpful down the stretch. Don't forget, you can scan the QR code and submit questions like we had in the first session, and we'll hand some of those to this panel. So let me introduce our second panel. Mark Ingram is the athletics director of UAB. I've known Mark for a long time. Tennessee, Temple, UAB, you've been around, right?
Yep, Georgia.
Georgia, that's right.
Tennessee twice.
Tennessee twice. Teammate of Peyton Manning at Tennessee.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's
correct.
You and Peyton were just like that, right?
We were real similar players.
Similar players, right? Sarah Young is with Regions. She's the Next Step Financial Wellness Program Manager. How are you tonight, Sarah?
Very good, thank you.
Very good. You did not play with Peyton Manning, right?
I did not,
okay.
But I'm from Indianapolis. So.
Oh, so there is a connection. Okay, big Colts, right? All right. William Chenoweth is the Regions Wealth Vice President, Portfolio Manager, and Wealth Management. I'm out of Peyton Manning jokes, so we'll just say welcome.
Good to be here.
And Eric Smith is the Financial Literacy Coach. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Right.
What is the Financial Literacy Coach, if you could sum that up?
We are a national financial education company, and we've been blessed to have a partnership with Regions Bank since 2015, teaching student athletes how to handle money.
Yeah, so you're the expert in the field. So we
do the best we can.
So we've got an expert here. Mark, I'll start with you. You and I have actually talked a lot about NIL, just in lunches, and
in fact we have.
And it's an interesting landscape. You've got student athletes with new responsibilities. They're looking for help with NIL opportunities. As an athletic director, what do you do at your institution at UAB to ensure athletes are surrounded with solid advice, they get good guidance, good management, and just to make sure that they are not taken advantage of?
Well, it helps when you got the world's greatest softball team that's also as part of your portfolio.
Yeah. Good to have them here.
That's right. Great to have those ladies here. Makes it easy. We have a great partnership with Regions. I mean, not to plug our great people here, but it's true, and we've got a lot of good partnerships where we bring people in to help with financial literacy campaigns and programming, and we do a lot of that during the year, which is challenging in that if this group of people here in the audience was all in middle school when a subject with the NCAA called time demands was really popular, and you didn't want to overuse student athlete time with all these other what we call continuing education pieces like financial literacy or social media training or mental health support, that kind of stuff. But you've got to have those things. What student athletes wanted 8 or 10 years ago is different than what student athletes want today. And but we have, like I said, as I started, we have great partnership here with Regions Bank and try to provide that information on an annual basis.
So, Sarah, I'll ask you, NIL has been a game changer, but the reality of it is, and a lot of people in this audience could probably attest to this, it's not going to be the same for everybody, right? Not everyone is going to get the same level of deals. What's also reality is there still seems to be a need for financial education and guidance. So I would ask you, what's your approach when presenting financial education programming to student athletes, just regardless of NIL? Let's take NIL off the table. You're just talking about financial education to students in general.
Yeah, absolutely. All students, regardless of the NIL status, definitely deserve the opportunity to have financial wellness be part of their college experience. So as industry professionals, it is our role, our responsibility to be able to give that to you, to be able to provide you with an entire team of people that can prepare you when you go out into the world. We're going to teach you things like basic money management. We're going to give you valuable tools and resources that are effective to use later on. So we might not be talking about wealth strategies to the entire group, but that's okay. We're going to teach you things about smart money habits, wise use of credit, the importance of saving. So that way, when you're ready to go out in the world and be done with the program in athletics and move forward, whatever's next in life, you have that confidence and responsibility to be able to go out there and make sound financial education decisions. So
William, I ask you, you were a student athlete. You were in these shoes at one point in your life, not too terribly long ago, right? What were some of the good and maybe even harder lessons you learned about managing just life and money trying to be a student athlete?
Yeah, I was. I would like to point out that I was not in the NIL era, and I don't think anyone would have offered me money to play. But what I learned a lot about life, and I think Tim touched on this earlier, but is time management. Being a student athlete, there's so much that goes into practice. There's so much that goes into your schoolwork. And then I remember I thought that I could study on the bus when we were coming home from games and such like that. I never was ever able to be productive study there. So I learned I had to do stuff beforehand. We traveled and all those things. And that flows into personal financial management, because eventually, whether it's through athletics or your career, you will have a job and a family and a life that will take up much more of your time. And so you need to have some type of plan for what you're trying to get your money to do for you, and whether that be saving, trying to buy a house, trying to invest for the future and retirement. And so having a plan that automates the decision so you're not having to late at night think about every financial decision is the best thing you can do. And thinking about present self and then future self.
So Mark, I'll ask the same to you because you lived it. You were a football player at Tennessee, and you have...
You got skipped. I noticed
No,
that.
I'll come back, Derek. I'll come back.
Okay.
Yeah, you were a football player at
I
Tennessee,
feel left out.
and you've dealt with college athletes your entire career. You've seen that balance of having to balance on the field, practice, weightlifting, conditioning. I've got to be a student. I've got to manage money. I've got to manage my life as well. We ask a lot of these kids.
Yeah, sure. And, you're looking at 20 hours a week minimum in season of competition. And really, it's greater than that, right? You guys all know that, especially if you're traveling, because that's not factored into the 20 hours. You probably don't even fully know what that rule is about. But with class and the amount of work that goes into it, and if you really want to be great at what you do, and I don't care what it is, I don't care if you play baseball, softball, or golf, or football, you know that you got to outwork your competition just like anybody else in any other business. If you're going to be successful, you got to outwork those people. So you're spending a lot of time. I mean, I haven't met an athlete in college that didn't want to be good at what they did, even if they're limited in how much practice time they can have. I know you get tired, but you want to win because you're a competitor. That's what puts you in a position to be where you are today. And so then somebody says, well, could you go take your free time and do some more and earn money? Well, you don't really have any free time. I mean, you have free time, but you're going to now sacrifice sleep or time with friends. So now you've got to decide which is more important, time with friends, which is social, and that's a huge part of growing up and being at college, and sleep is important to your performance too. At some point you got to do that. In my very first job, I was a grad assistant. When I finished playing in college, I was a grad assistant at Tennessee working in football recruiting, and the rule for the NCAA had just changed that you could get a job during your season. You could always work in your off season, but now you could work during the season. And somehow I was the guy that nobody wanted to do this job, keep track of this. And so every athlete, it was like I had this form you had to fill out, and it was this big deal made about this. And Mark, you're going to be in charge of the forms. You got to keep track of the forms. There's a stack of the forms. You got to have forms, keep them straight, organized, alphabetized, sorted, all this kind of thing. And at the end of the year, not one form was ever filled out because there's no time to actually go do that work. And so balancing all this is really a challenge that most people, you're not normal people. You guys are all superhumans, and the normal people don't really understand what you're doing and what that's like. And that's also part of the challenge when other people outside of the industry start making rules for what happens inside the industry.
They were the TPS forms. It's Office Space. It's a good movie before your time. You should all go watch it.
Yeah.
All right. Dunder Mifflin. Yes. It was Office before The Office. Tim, he's shaming, so I'm going to give you back-to-back questions. What's been your experience speaking with student athletes over the years before there was name, image, and likeness?
I think it goes back to what Sarah was talking about, and just we were really focused on just teaching the basics. And we really weren't focused much on wealth creation. We were just trying to teach people how to be able to manage the money that was coming in at that point. But with the advent of NIL, the conversation has certainly changed somewhat. But what I've also seen, Ryan, is that the expectations have also changed. And sometimes those are realistic expectations. Sometimes they're somewhat unrealistic. But, now we're having to have the conversations around wealth management, and, we save that for smart people like William to give that advice. But, it has, back in the day when the NCAA actually helped launch our company, and I'm proud to say now that we've done nearly 500,000 student athletes since that day, the needs for that education. I think somebody else earlier said that there was a gap in the education. I think Tim said that on the first panel. And, I applaud people, like Mark and what they're doing to continually educate, because it's a constant thing. And as technology has changed, the information has to also change as well.
So you've dealt with professional athletes too. And do you see a lot of commonality between the professional athletes you've dealt with, dealing with what they have to deal with, to what the students today they're dealing with NIL have to deal with?
Well, it's similar in one regard, but it's also a little bit different in that historically, when we would be working with collegiate student athletes, the big money was going to come if they made it to the league. Well, now the conversation is that for a lot of people, the big money is now. And so the conversations are a little bit different. It's similar in that everybody's looking to, make the big amount of money, and they need to be prepared. But, I can tell you that not everybody has the same priority for this education. But, the more information that you know that's good information, the better it is for any of us, whether we're student athletes or, staff members or whatever that is.
I'm going to start with William on this one, but I think we could all have an answer. If you want to think about it, feel free to jump in. You're wealth advisor at Regions. What do you wish when you were this age someone would have told you about money and dealing with money?
The first thing that's come to mind is you are your greatest asset. Right now, you are investing in yourself through school and sports, and that's the best thing you do, and that should never stop. So when you get to work, it's not quite like practice. You can't necessarily out-hustle somebody, but you can't outwork them, and you can continue to learn. There's all kinds of things to learn. I think I've been with Regions 10 years now. I've had a few different roles, and there's so many things to learn. You might get the task done, but what else could you learn? And that can change everything for you, because you may be able to help that one person that then moves the needle for you. And so just never stop learning. College teaches you that, but it doesn't end there. It actually really just opens up and begins.
Anybody else?
I would say to start saving now. It seems like so out of reach, but one day your future self will thank you if you start saving now. So definitely take that into consideration.
It's great advice.
Yeah.
Mark, I'll ask you as athletics director at UAB, what do you see the biggest challenge managing this new NIL environment, and really primarily how it's impacting the athletes under your care? And we don't have to limit it to one. What are the biggest challenges you see?
Yeah, the use of your name, image, and likeness is a wonderful thing. That's not really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about collective payments from these institutions around at each school. Every school just about has a collective. They're trying to raise money through this collective to pay you to either retain your services or to obtain your services through the transfer portal, which is really, really hard. That's the challenge, is the flexibility that every college student has to transfer as many times as they want and play immediately creates real stress on the ability to manage a team, to prepare for next year. Team culture is a phrase that was really a heavily used phrase a few years ago. Got to have positive culture. Man, that place got a toxic culture. I don't like their culture. We need a better culture. Well, when 48% of your locker room flips every year because of natural attrition through graduation or transfer, it's hard to build a team culture. It's hard. When I played, 120 guys on our team, and I cannot think of 10 in a 5-year career that left us through transfer. I can't think of 10. If you're on a football team, you had 20 last year. And you have another 20 this year. And so for me, the older guys told me stuff like, hey, it says 2 o'clock meeting. Yeah, I'll be there at 2 o'clock. No. When you get there at 2 o'clock, you're supposed to be taped. You're supposed to have this on. You're supposed to be wearing that. You're supposed to have your notebook. And you better not be there at 2. You better be there at 1:50. That's what that means. Oh, okay. Well, now every coach has to train you to do that every single year. This is what we wear when we eat. This is what we wear when we travel. This is where you sit. You sit next to him, and you don't do this, and you don't chew gum, and don't wear a hat. And all this stuff is challenging the culture of our program, and it's because of the combination, I would say, of the transferability, and then, you getting recruited off of my roster and into the portal for a new and better deal somewhere else.
And you've seen the numbers too. I mean, you've seen how many players go into the portal and stay there.
Most.
It's not.
You know that?
Yeah.
More than half. Where you think about jumping in the portal because the grass is so green tomorrow, more than half of you going to go in that portal and stay there.
Yeah.
You got a great opportunity where you are.
That's the underreported, because we see the high end of the portal.
Right.
We see guys and ladies that go in. Yeah.
Transferred up.
Yeah.
Became some big star. Hey, good for them. It's not like that's a bad thing. But, when earlier the previous group said that only 2%, Rich from Auburn said 2% are going to go pro. Raise your hand if you're part of the 2%. You're all going to raise your hand, right? Guess what? More than half aren't coming out of the portal. Well, you're not part of that half, right? Of course not. You're not part of that half, and only like 5% are transferring up. Well, you're part of that group. Of course you are, right? Everybody that gets in the portal thinks they're in that group. But there's a whole group of high school kids coming in too. They want your job. So just remember that if you've got an opportunity, remember that opportunity. Don't just jump in because some person somewhere else convinced you that you're going to be their starter when really what they mean is they need depth.
Well, a good friend of mine once said, sometimes the grass looks greener because your neighbor has a bad sewage tank too, so understand that. Eric, what gaps do you see across the country that schools and student athletes need to keep in mind as that landscape continues to evolve?
You know, surprisingly, I still see an educational gap. I see a gap in expectations that aren't sometimes aligned with reality. You know, Ryan, let me just tell you, I have a different name for name, image, and likeness, Mark. I call it new income to leverage, right? And that's really what it is from my perspective. Here's a new opportunity, whatever, it might be different for different people that we're speaking to, but all of them have one thing in common. They need to have the information so they can make the best choice for their situation. And financial literacy, financial education is the first step of that. The application of that knowledge is the second step. And if you get good resources, and you know, Regions Bank has been committed to this for years, and I'm extremely proud to be associated with Regions and what they're doing, what Sarah's doing. And you know, I think that for me has been the biggest. Just last week, I'm talking to a baseball player and their parents, and there was a certain level of information that was not even known by the parent. And this is basic tax information. And so when you ask that question, I go back and I think about that conversation I had over Zoom with the parents about the taxes that were due from the NIL. And so for them, I would say, hey, the gap there is in education. But so for me, it's expectation and education is what I'm still seeing.
So that's a good transition because both of you work in the financial industry. Uh-oh, I've got a tax burden now, right? I mean, that's a reality of this, is that if you're getting paid, the government gets their share as well. And that's alarming to a lot because a lot of times you've never had to deal with this. And I would imagine any financial institution is going to perhaps help you understand that, right? I mean, there's got to be, like Tim said, there's got to be good education for people to know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. We're going to help you understand the forms you're going to have to fill out.
Yeah, there are a lot of them, by the way. Yeah, and you've seen this too, Mark. I mean, I'm sure you've seen players that all of a sudden they get a nice deal. Sure. You know, we've done deals, our company with Jacob Zeno, for instance, your quarterback. He's a fine, really good quarterback.
If you want a deal, this fella here will make one for you. You should talk to Ryan after the show and make sure that you have an opportunity.
Absolutely. It's like I've told Rich, we've just got money buried in the back. We're going to give it away.
It makes so much, it's ridiculous. They work really hard for it. It's not real life is another thing. We were talking about this backstage. It's like this depends on your sport. If you're a football, men's or women's basketball, women's tennis, volleyball player, you're on a full scholarship. We're paying for your school, we're paying for your housing, we're paying for your meals, we pay for your travel, we pay for a lot of your clothes. We've got a nutritionist to help you with your dietary needs. You need a mental health coach. We got people to help you with those sort of things. We've got tutors. You want a tutor? Any subject, Latin, astronomy, whatever, we'll find you a tutor at no cost to you. You get hurt, there's no copay. Come on into the training room. We got you. You don't even know what a copay is. We're going to take care of that. We're paying for that, right? And then we're going to give you this big NIL deal. So now it's cash. So we're paying for your housing. You basically have no expenses. What are you doing with all that money? I hope you're saving it, right? But you know, then you don't go pro, as Rich McGlynn said, because 98% of you are not going to do that. And now you got a real job making $42,000 pre-tax. You don't know what taxes are yet, and then boom, now reality really does hit of what life looks like. It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. And you've dealt with professional athletes, and I'm quite certain even the professional athletes sometimes are surprised by this, right? I mean, all of a sudden they're making millions of dollars, and that contract is a 5-year, $48 million contract. They think they've got $48 million in their pocket all of a sudden, right?
Yeah, but you know, and the difference there is that those conversations typically in the past were for 22, 23-year-olds. Now we're having those same conversations, same types of conversations with 17 and 18-year-olds. And so, you know, I don't know about you, but I saw the world much differently when I was 18 than when I was 22 or 23. And so it's interesting how, again, you know, this new NIL world has created these great opportunities, but also this really, for me, an awesome opportunity to educate people in a way that they can apply it to their real life.
Help me, Mark, if you can, understand, or help the student athletes here understand the process around NIL as best you can. And I know this is not something that you, as an athletics director, deal with. There are people in your athletics department, but you see it. How can families and student athletes find and develop those opportunities and those NIL relationships?
Yeah, you know, there's several ways. One, I mean, you can do it yourself. So whatever hometown you're from, you know, there's some local business, a person that's enthusiastic about you going to wherever you are, and maybe they want to do a deal with you. You can do that directly. You need to have a contract, and you would be advised to use it with us. We've got an organization called Open Doors who does contracts. You can run that contract through them. We've got people on our staff who would help you. You, again, no matter what school you're at, you're using one of these type platforms to help create a contract and get a 1099 on the back end of that contract, make sure to help with your taxes. So you'd be wise to do that. We have a person, actually a couple of people in our athletic department who every day they're out talking to businesses about doing a deal with the athletic department, and would you also consider one of our student athletes. So we're trying to facilitate that conversation. We can only take that so far, which is learn about their interest. Are they interested? And then we would marry you to that person, introduce you to that person, and then, you know, what you then have to do, autograph signings, pictures, whatever is between you and them for whatever negotiated amount of money. We don't do that. Rules don't allow you to do that, but we can make an introduction if somebody is interested. So a lot of athletic departments are pretty much in the same place there. As far as legitimate, what I would call legitimate use of your name, your image, and your likeness. And that is you on a commercial, you on a billboard, you doing social media posts based on the brand that you've built.
So for all three of you, Mark just touched on something there. And you see this working in a financial institution, you see this working with the people you've worked with. Not everyone has your best interest in mind. Just because someone comes up and says, hey, this is a great deal, doesn't always mean it's a great deal. I know this is a little open-ended, but what advice from working in the financial industry can you give to these student athletes about being careful that not everyone has your best interest in mind?
Want to go first?
I think that's where the team comes into play.
Yeah.
You need to partner up with somebody that you know, trust, that's reputable, a large organization like Regions, to be able to help you, that has proven results and has your best interests.
And I think to do that, you know, you ask any question you want, ask how their business works, how they get compensated, if that's something to be involved with. Don't hold back anything. Someone that wants to help you should be more than willing to disclose anything and everything about how their business works. We do that all the time with customers. It's a very important part of what we do. A lot of times we have to slow customers down because we want to make sure things get, expectations are everything. We want to make sure that we talk about that on the front end and something doesn't happen 6 months down the road and they feel like we didn't tell them something.
And Eric, I'm sure you've dealt with this a lot. A player runs into a bad actor and all of a sudden they're in a contract that is not benefiting to them, or they've done a deal and they never see any of the money, and someone has gone away with the money when they did all the work.
Yeah, and oftentimes that occurs because they didn't get the proper input. They didn't have somebody looking over those contracts. You know, the fact that Mark's got people on staff to do that, I mean, that's invaluable because I'm not an attorney and I certainly am not qualified to make judgments on those types of situations. So usually, and I have heard of quite a few of those, and back in the days when I did some business management for NFL players, we dealt directly with some of those bad characters, as you say. And so, you know, also, you know, you have a requirement, if you have an NIL deal, to report it, right? You got to say, hey, even if it, let's say you go outside of Open Doors, you still got to report it to the compliance office. So if you have somebody that's not wanting to have you report the fact that they're doing a deal with you, that should be the first red flag. Hey, you know, this needs to be above board and we need to have other eyes taking a look at it. If someone is pressuring you to sign a contract today for an NIL deal, I would say that's another red flag. I would go get somebody who has some experience with that to review that contract before you sign it.
And I'll find somebody that you trust to read through that with you. Don't sign some contract that your parent or some other person you really trust has given that a read with you. So there's not something in there that you don't understand that hurts you.
And I'll make this point. As I mentioned, we've done several of these with your school, Mark, with Alabama and with Auburn. And in each instance, we've had to submit it to the university so that the university can look over and make sure you're not violating any policies there. So if somebody wants you to sign it right away, don't do that. that
You got see some of you guys from Sanford. You got a Nike deal. Don't go sign a deal with Adidas. The university is going to have a real issue with that. We have an Under Armour contract. So whatever your apparel deal is with your university, if you try to do something with somebody else, that's probably going to be a real challenge for you to be able to really promote that.
I found this interesting earlier, and this question kind of dovetails off what Tim mentioned earlier, that there was an Oregon athlete that makes deals only with equity, so that this athlete has future earnings, not just immediate gains. So here's a question. Should we be seeking out money, physical products, or something else? I'll start with you, Eric. I mean, how would you answer that?
Probably differently than what most people would answer. I mean, everybody's chasing the dollar right now. And if we could say, hey, not only do you have an opportunity to enhance your life, we also have an opportunity to teach the value of giving, right? And I love the deals where the NIL is tied to a charitable effort on behalf of the athlete. But I think that, for me, I would say that, if you have some other values that we can also incorporate other than just chasing the money, but I'll be honest with you, a lot of the athletes, Mark, I don't know what your experience is. I mean, that's what we're all focused on is getting that dollar. But, I have read that article, and I think that doing things like that, they're going to pay dividends later in life. Those are out-of-the-box ways of doing NIL, and I think those can certainly be great. But again, I would caution you, if you're going to do something like that that's a little outside of the norm, again, get somebody that you trust to take a look at those deals before you, in fact, sign a contract.
Mark, I would say, if you've got an athlete that has a certain interest in an area and there's a good marriage there, a physical product is not the worst thing. It may not be a money transaction. It might be, I'm sending out a tweet, I'm doing something on Instagram, I'm doing an interview in exchange for a physical product, not just money.
Yeah, and meals are a huge one.
Yeah.
Like restaurants will do deals with you. Can I have one meal a week here? And every time you're there, you tweet out that you were there and had another great meal at wherever. That is not as hard to get as you think. Look, y'all, if you want this, you got to go hustle and get it if it's really important to you. Don't be afraid to introduce yourself and say, hey, I come here a lot. I'd like to. And if you don't have a deal, but you want to deal with that place, start tweeting that out yourself and tag them, right? You might be able to create some activity. Who is this person that's always tagging us in their post? And look at how many followers they have. If you got no followers, you don't have value. Okay, I mean, they're running a business. But food for a restaurant is not that pricey in bulk to do that with you. That's not hard. Those of you that play sports that have a lot of different equipment, try to go get equipment deals that are, golf balls, baseballs, gloves, batting gloves, Evo Shield, these kind of other ancillary. You're a bowler, you got some interesting shoe or whatever bags that are not real common in the apparel space. Those athletes have a ton of opportunity. Tennis rackets, golf clubs, these kind of things, I think have a lot of opportunity for student athletes in equipment that's not cash, that's valuable to you.
On the cash side, though, it's not been too terribly long. You mentioned your softball team is here. They're awesome. It's a great softball team.
God, they're awesome.
It's not been too terribly long, though, that they couldn't even go back by NCAA rule to their hometown and do a hitting clinic or a pitching clinic and get paid to do that.
And you can do that now.
Yeah.
You guys can give hitting lessons and pitching lessons and whatever. You can, absolutely.
We can all comment on this. What are some of the common financial mistakes you see, and how can student athletes avoid them? I don't know if you guys, from the financial institution point of view, want to weigh in on this one first, but from a student athlete or a young person that's just out of college, what are some of the common financial mistakes you see early?
Well, I think you see it in student athletes, but you see it in anyone early that comes into some funds, and it's that you take it and you immediately put it into one thing, so you're fulfilling whatever's most on your mind right now. And I think everything with finance it's all sacrifice. Every decision you make with money is a sacrifice. You want something now, you're sacrificing something either currently or in the future. And so you've got to be able to have multiple mindsets. And so taxes is a big one. You may, if you get $10,000, you are not able to spend all $10,000, or someone will come asking for it. But also starting early in investing is huge. And it may feel insignificant. Oh, I can only invest $25 a month. I'm telling you, over time, over your career, you will look back on that $25,000 or $25 that you started with and invested per month, and then it grows. It will be life-changing. And so don't feel that it's insignificant to start too small investing for the future.
I assume you concur entirely.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you've seen this from the athletes you've dealt with, both professional and younger athletes like this. What are some common mistakes, some common trip ups you see financially that they make early?
Honestly, and it's not the sexiest thing to talk about, but most people just don't have a plan. So they get that $10,000 or they get that $20,000, and if you don't have a plan for what you're going to do with the money just tends to evaporate, as we all know, right? And so one of the things that we try to teach is how do I develop a plan that's realistic, reasonable, but still allows some flexibility to enjoy a little bit of that money. But as William said, we also got to be mindful of the taxes that potentially might be due with that.
And Mark, I know your institution, you guys, you're doing a lot of things. And any athletics department, whether it be Samford or UAB or Alabama or Auburn, they're doing a lot of things, but they want the best for the student athlete.
Sure.
So each one of these departments has somebody you can go to and talk to about these things. They may not have the answers, but they can get you to someone that does.
Yeah, look, 100%. Everybody's got somebody, even if they haven't hired a person whose sole job is that, your compliance office can help you with this. You know, they are not bad people. They know the rules. They monitor the rules. They help our coaches and our staff manage and understand the rules. You can go to them anytime you want. Hey, this person approached me. I've got this contract. Am I allowed to do this? Go ask them. They'll tell you.
I want to, and I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm going off script here, but I know you know this. We in the first session talked about the reality of revenue sharing. And Rich talked about it from an Auburn athletic department. You can from a UAB athletic department. The view is, these colleges, they're just raking in money. This revenue sharing is going to be a boom for everyone.
I almost can't sit here. There's so much cash.
I know. It's just falling out.
God.
Yes.
What will we do?
But that is not the reality. The reality is not that you guys are just raking it in, and revenue sharing means everybody's going to have a financial windfall.
Yeah, every athletic department, no matter what their total budget is, spends it. Okay, so whatever we get, we spend. We spend back on investing in our student athletes, in our programs, in our stadiums, in our locker rooms, in our various practice facilities, strength equipment, stuff to help us be better, to help you be better, to help win more games. We add staff as support for you, whatever that might be. And so one of the things that even the largest budget schools in the country are faced with is, so they just got some mega TV deal a couple of years ago, or they just learned in March how much more money they're going to get through the college football playoff, 12-team playoff, and they made a decision to go invest and do some $300 million renovation to some stadium or arena, and we're going to do this because it's going to be awesome for our athletes, it's going to be awesome for our fans, it's going to build excitement, it's going to be so good for the community, and then bang, now they got a rev share $20 million of that, and they go, oh man, I got that in this debt over here that I invest, because they've already knocked that wall down, and they're gonna, here comes the crane, and we can't stop that work. And so now they got to figure that out. And one of the real crimes in this is without naming names, a person says, hey, I want to insure through this house settlement. House is a person, by the way, not Congress. I want to ensure that the kid on the playground today is going to have a better experience when they get to college. Well, first of all, you all have a better experience. You don't know the difference, but your experience is better than the people that did what you did 10 years ago, which was better than the people 10 years before that. It continues to grow. And so the answer is, well, of course. The defendant's lawyer says, of course, they're going to have a better experience. Well, that's because they're assuming that the person on the playground is going to play football or basketball. But if that person on the playground plays an Olympic sport, they're going to have a worse experience, because they're going to have to, every school is going to have to diminish and defund those programs in order to find the funds to go support this rev share. And it's a real crime. It's a real shame in college athletics. This whole thing was supposed to be about educating you through access to athletics. Well, nobody talks about academics anymore. I care that you graduate. Your parents care that you graduate. Your president cares that you graduate. But nobody's talking about that anymore. And every time you transfer, your odds of graduation decreases, and it's cut in half, and it's diminished every time. And that just isn't told. And so we're making these decisions, and we're fighting off litigation. The NCAA is fighting litigation, a new lawsuit every single day. And it's like treading water with a 100-pound backpack on your pack, and I got 4 kids, and somebody said, "What's that like?" Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, says, "What's that like?" He says, "It's like having treading water, and then somebody hands you a baby, and says, 'Now tread water again.'" That's what it's like. You're trying to tread water and keep your mouth above the water, man. So there's not this infinite stack of cash that people just don't know how to spend. We're all investing it back, and so now we've got to just rethink how will we spend. What are we currently doing that we'll stop doing so that we can reinvest it in a different way?
And you shook your head at everything Mark said, and you've seen this practically as well. That's not just true at UAB, it's true at the Texas and Michigans of the world, and even the massive programs that everybody thinks will not have to make those decisions.
Right. And obviously he's coming at it from an institution perspective, but as somebody who's trying to coach up student athletes, to me, what it means is, hey, there's another opportunity because of the revenue they're going to be sharing. Here's additional money that we get to teach people how to do something good with, right? So it's obviously a challenge to the institution, but the indirect result, or direct result rather, is that the students get additional monies at those schools that are participating in RevShare.
Each of these fine panelists are going to have a final thought in just a second. I want to remind you, there's some next steps here. There's a survey, and there'll be a barcode. Just scan the barcode and you can get additional resources so you can answer a lot of the questions. You see the barcodes there on the screen. If you want to scan those, and later on, if you'll help us out with the survey and look at some of the great resources that are available to you from this, but also as Mark said, and as Eric said many times, at your school as well. Don't ignore those resources that are available at your school. Let's take time for a final thought from each of you. As you've discussed this, we've had 2 sessions. What would you like to leave each person here with? I'll start with you, Mark. We'll just come down the line.
Yeah, listen, if you want to generate revenue, additional dollars, you can do that, and it's a wonderful thing that we are now in a position to let you do that. But there's no such thing as free money. You know, you hear these mythical tales of all this free money that's out there. There's no such thing as free money. If you want it, you got to hustle and go get it. And you have a great opportunity. There was a conversation earlier about internships. Don't wait until you're a junior or senior to go to your career fair on campus. Go do that stuff. You've got an advantage over everybody, but use those advantages in every possible way, in the NIL space and in your future job opportunities. You guys are superhumans. You're athletic. You're competitive, you're driven, you take direction, all these things, and you're really smart. You're going to have a college degree to go advance well beyond your peers. So I encourage you to think like that, and yes, use the resources around you. You've got them.
I would say take advantage now of any financial education that you can learn to further your life past college, and decide now to become the CEO of your finances.
I would say, one, enjoy yourself. College is awesome. But spend some time thinking about where you want to be 5, 10, 15 years from now. Trust me, it will change, but it's important to think about that and the decisions you make today that will influence where you are on those time frames. And it's worth it. You don't have to spend a lot of time, but it's worth to think about that because it will get here before you know it.
You know, Ron, again, I'll just say, hey, new income to leverage. It's a great concept. It looks different for nearly everybody in the room. I would encourage you kind of to echo what Sarah said, take advantage of all the financial educational resources they have out there. You know, I'm going to give a shout out to Regions Bank for making this forum even happen. You know, and I would say just make certain that you have a game plan for whatever that NIL looks like in your life. And if you have a game plan, then the chances for you having a successful experience with new income to leverage is greatly enhanced.
Eric Smith, William Chenoweth, Sarah Young, Mark Ingram, more great wisdom in this session. How about giving them a round of applause and thank them for being with us tonight. And we want to thank all of you and those joining us remotely as well. We enjoy watching you guys participate in athletics, and you are living in a great time to be a college athlete. So take great advantage of it, and you've been given some great wisdom here tonight, and it will live forever at the Regions website. Please scan both those barcodes, help with the survey, and enjoy the other great resources that they offer you there. Thank you for being with us tonight, and have a great week.